I should be at work, but instead, I am sitting at the kitchen table, inexplicably calm, drinking a cup of freshly brewed coffee. I needed this to calm down. Normally, I find this practice very peaceful. When our kids were little, I did this regularly. I would get up about an hour earlier than everyone else in the household, just to enjoy the quiet. I guess it was something of a passion of mine. I'm Bryce Lewis, by the way. I've been happily married for 25 years. Well, I was happy up until a couple of hours ago. We have 4 children, and our youngest left home last year. My wife got really depressed because of the empty nest syndrome. I think that's what she called it. So I suggested she start a hobby. I think she did just that. An hour ago, I didn't know his name. His name was Rogers, or at least that's what she kept calling him. Do it, stud. Get it to me. It was odd that the aroma of their favorite coffee, which filled the house, didn't interrupt them. Normally, when I made coffee, my wife Evelyn would rush downstairs before it was even ready. Evelyn was very busy, so that might explain why she hadn't noticed the scent yet. Tell me how much better I am than your spineless weakling husband. My God, you're so much better. My old Model 59 Smith & Wesson sits loaded on the red oak kitchen counter next to my mug. I wondered whether to put it on safety and decided to do so. I had to be careful. Well, just in case, but after all, her boyfriend is a cop. How do I know this? Because when I got home early, his uniform and cummerbund were strewn across my living room floor, along with all of my wife's clothes, including her black lace crotchless Victoria's Secret panties. She bought them 2 months ago and showed them to me. I immediately started getting excited and told her to try them on. But she cooed. Boy, these are only for special occasions. I expected these for our 25th wedding anniversary, which came and went without her wearing them. I wonder what could be more special than this. My birthday? No, that was 2 days ago. Now I know. The relentless creaking of the bed springs and the rhythmic thudding of the headboard against the wall invaded my thoughts, making it nearly impossible to focus on my task. I wasn't certain how much time I had, but the incessant noise from what used to be my bedroom, now a place I vowed never to enter again, suggested I had ample time. This wasn't their first encounter. I knew that much. I overheard my loving wife say, "Damn it, baby. We need to find a way to increase our time together to 2 or 3 times a week instead of once in a while." At least, that's what I thought she said. How did I end up trapped in this nightmare? It was really stupid. I went to work and forgot my briefcase. No, I actually left it in the garage because I put it there to get the cat out from under the hood of my car and forgot about the briefcase. Tabby was our second cat. One cold winter morning many years ago, I forgot to knock on the hood before starting the car, and that was the end of Clarence, our first cat. There is nothing like the sound a cat makes when it is wrapped in a fan belt, spinning at about 1,000 revolutions per minute, not to mention all that fur flying around. Clarence wasn't smart enough, and apparently, neither was I. My briefcase wasn't really that important, so I was just going to leave it, but I had to visit a client who drove me straight to the house. As I turned onto my street, I immediately saw a black and white police car parked in front of the entrance. It felt like someone had stabbed me with a knife in my heart. I assumed that something terrible had happened to my devoted wife. I drove my 8-year-old Camry into the driveway, narrowly missing my wife's brand new silver Lexus LS sedan. Her plaster garden gnome wasn't so lucky. I didn't even close the door and ran into the house. That's ultimately how I ended up here drinking coffee. Take me now, Rogers Dewey Good. God, I have never felt anything better. It was a highly unpleasant situation, and instead of coffee, I craved whiskey, but I knew I needed a clear head. Their passionate cries were incredibly disturbing, and witnessing it was even worse. But I had to watch, if only to capture the necessary video and audio. Honestly, seeing them having sex in my bed wasn't the most disturbing part. The worst aspect was the verbal humiliation my wife inflicted on me. God, you're so much better than Bryce. Give it to me, baby. Give it all to me. I know I can handle it all this time. I know I can handle this. Hell yeah. Apparently, this really excited her lover because the entire house started to shake along with the bed, and his swearing and grumbling grew louder. Okay, yeah, he actually had more than me, so excuse me, damn it. If she wanted more, she shouldn't have married me. Let me tell you, it is a shock when your wife cheats with her lover in your marital bed. And yes, they have done it on my side. My wife, holding her breath, wrote in cowgirl style and told her lover how much it turned her on. Part of me couldn't believe it all, even after I'd seen and heard enough to convince the jury of what was going on. But my wife was 50 years old, and the idiot she cheated on me with couldn't have been older than 30, and he was in really good shape. It's unlikely that my wife matched him. Sure, I wasn't a macho man either, but couldn't that shithead at least go after someone's wife who was in shape? I don't understand. The activity seemed endless, but after roughly 90 minutes, everything became eerily quiet. They must have paused for a break. Suddenly, my wife's voice cut through the silence. "Have you made coffee?" There was no reply from her boyfriend. Then I heard Evelyn exclaim, "My God," followed by frantic movement. The sounds of closet doors, dresser drawers, and laundry baskets being opened and closed filled the air. I assumed they were busy erasing traces of their date. I heard them descending the stairs. They both emerged in the kitchen, naked but wrapped in sheets. They noticed me instantly. Evelyn gasped sharply upon seeing me, and her lover mirrored her reaction. I couldn't tell if his shock was due to my presence or the sight of the Smith & Wesson Model 59. He cast a quick, anxious glance towards his uniform and immediately grew desperate. I watched as he literally began to fade before my eyes, his lips trembling. In despair, he fell to his knees, losing the sheet in the process, and started frantically rummaging through the pile on the floor. He took that too. I think he called it your throwing weapon. I'm guessing what upset him the most was the fact that the serial number had been removed, which could mean something like 5 to 7 years for this. Former Officer Studlew's shoulders slumped upon hearing the news. Like I mentioned, he's a really caring guy. We had a pleasant chat while you two lovebirds were upstairs doing your thing. Stud glanced quickly out the window at the street. Yes, he also took a patrol car. Your boss mentioned that you provide safety at a construction site. He was considering taking your uniform too, but figured you might need it when you leave here. Yes. Are you planning to shoot one of them? Remember, we get upset if civilians take such actions, even if the person deserves it. One of the perks of our job is that we have the authority to shoot people, but you don't. I assured Uncle Pat, also known as Sergeant Allen, that as long as the suspect doesn't have an unknown third weapon, no one will be harmed. Your boss responded with, "Okay," and as he headed for the door, he added, "Do me a favor and tell Officer Lewis not to come to the station. We'll call him when we want to talk to him." I've never seen a policeman cry before. It's time to take up your weapon. You don't have a third gun, do you? He shook his head negatively. I knew it wasn't because we had checked. I was just trying to make my point. I wasn't actually aiming at any of them. I just kind of waved at them and continued with my story. Perhaps you could call your wife to give you a ride home. Probably not. She was too upset about the video I emailed her of you two in my bedroom. It was hard to understand what she was saying, but she mentioned her father, the chief of police, and she asked how you could do this to your children. She told me about them. You seem to have a good family, too bad. Even with everything going on, I'm actually enjoying myself right now. It felt a bit like I had hooked a fish and was just toying with it. I would ask my wife to take you, but her car was confiscated. The police impounded your car, Evelyn, he explained, because there were a couple of ounces of unaccounted weed in the front seat. Sergeant Allen mentioned that they usually just write a ticket if they do anything at all, but he feels like they owe me something for all the trouble the police department has caused me. Don't worry, he added. You can probably pick up the car in a few days after they do all their due diligence. My God, her voice no longer carried the sharp edge of a scream. Instead, it had softened into a sorrowful moan, reminiscent of a lonely little hound howling at the moon. Well, officer, I think it's time for you to put on your uniform and leave. He complied without hesitation. Girl, it's a pity that you didn't tell me about this earlier. I was worried that you loved him and were going to divorce me, I replied. She had been in a state of shock earlier, but now she was clearly nervous and focused intently on me. Well, I'm really sorry. When I believed you didn't love me anymore, I sent the video to our kids. I just wanted them to know who their new dad would be. You might need to wait a bit before calling them. For some reason, they seemed upset. I thought they'd be happy for you. Well, that shows you what I did. My God, you didn't do it. I simply nodded. I forgot to mention one more thing, but you probably already know about it. Your lover's wife works in the same company as you. I think she mentioned that she works as an executive assistant to the CEO. Don't worry, I told her not to fire you because you'll still need your job, even if they transfer you to Little Rock. When I talked to the lawyer, she said that since you earn more than me, you will pay me child support for several years. She thinks it will be somewhere around $3,000 a month. I know that most cheated husbands refuse to accept this. They are so macho, but this won't happen to me. I'm planning to take some time off from work and go on a long fishing vacation to deal with my pain. As the song goes, deep sea senorita fishing in the Gulf of Mexico. I don't quite understand why the lawyer needed your photograph. She said it was to give it to her father. Maybe it was so she could pass it on to all the officers in case they wanted to start any harassment, or maybe it was to see if any of them still wanted to date you. But anyway, I gave her a photo that clearly shows your deep-throating skills. I also sent a copy of the video to your mom and dad and all your colleagues. Evelyn barely reacted. She sat on the floor wrapped in her sheet, sobbing, shaking her head, and muttering, "This can't happen to me." "Okay, honey, it's time for you to get dressed and pack your bag. Your parents should be here to pick you up soon," I said, gently nudging her towards the stairs. "Take me?" she asked. "Well, of course, you'll need a place to stay for the night. They mentioned that you could stay with them for a while. The house will have to be sold as part of the divorce," I explained. "Divorce?" I called out as she walked away. "You seem to have a few questions, my dear. This surprises me. What do you think should happen now that I know?" "Well, I really didn't think you'd find out. Are we gonna continue this pointless conversation?" It grew silent upstairs for a few minutes. She remained quiet, only letting out the occasional wheeze and sob. Why do cheaters always cry when they get caught? This is the most terrible thing. If being caught is so unpleasant, then for God's sake, don't cheat. Around 10 minutes later, she descended the stairs, dressed but without a suitcase. "Bryce, honey, she began, but just then, I heard her parents' car pull up to our house. "Goodbye, Evelyn," I said, maintaining my gentlemanly demeanor as I held the door open for her.